The day I found out that my HOA was trying to force me into using their approved snow removal service, I was standing in my driveway at 6 in the morning with my coffee, watching my neighbor Xander Armstrong get into his truck to head to work. "You hear about this nonsense?" Xavier called out to me, waving a bright yellow piece of paper. I walked over, my boots crunching on the light dusting of snow from 2 nights ago that I had cleared myself. "What nonsense?" I asked, taking the paper he held out. My name is Xander Armstrong, and I had lived in the Meadowbrook community in Boulder, Colorado for 3 years. It was a nice neighborhood, generally quiet, with decent people and mountain views that made the mortgage worth it. The HOA had always been a minor annoyance, but nothing too terrible. Until now. The letter was from Patricia Henderson, the HOA president, a woman in her mid-50s who had made it her personal mission to control every aspect of life in our community. The letter stated, in no uncertain terms, that all homeowners were now required to use the HOA's approved snow removal service, Rocky Mountain Snow Pros. No exceptions. The cost would be $200 per season, automatically added to our HOA dues. Anyone found removing their own snow or using a different service would be fined $500 per incident. "This cannot be legal," I said, reading it again. "That is what my wife said, but you know Patricia. She thinks she runs her own little kingdom here." Xavier shook his head. "I already paid for the season with Mountain Peak Snow Removal. They have been doing my driveway for 2 years. Now I am supposed to just eat that cost and pay the HOA too?" I handed the letter back to him. "I have my own plow attachment for my truck. I am not paying someone to do what I can do myself in 20 minutes. Xavier grinned. "Good luck with that. You know Patricia will have a fit." He was right, of course, but I was not about to let the HOA dictate how I cleared snow from my own property. I went back inside, kissed my girlfriend Amy goodbye as she was getting ready for work at the hospital, and settled in at my home office. I worked as a software engineer, mostly remote, which gave me the flexibility to handle my own property maintenance. The first real snowfall of the season came 3 days later. I woke up to 6 inches of fresh powder and the sound of my phone ringing. It was barely past dawn. "Mr. Armstrong, this is Patricia Henderson from the Meadowbrook HOA. "I know who you are, Patricia. What can I do for you at 6 in the morning? "I am calling to remind you that all snow removal must be done by Rocky Mountain Snow Pros. I noticed you did not respond to the letter, so I wanted to make sure you received it." I walked to my window and looked out at my driveway. "I received it. And I am not using your service. I have my own equipment." There was a pause. "Mr. Armstrong, this is not optional. The board voted, and this is now a community rule, for insurance purposes and uniformity. Patricia, you cannot force me to pay for a service I do not want or need. I have been clearing my own snow since I moved here. There have been no complaints, no issues, nothing. The decision has been made. If you remove your own snow, you will be fined. I suggest you reconsider." She hung up. I stood there for a moment, looking at my phone, then out at the snow-covered driveway. Amy came up behind me, already in her scrubs. "Let me guess, Patricia. She is insisting I use their snow service." Amy rolled her eyes. She had dealt with Patricia before over the color of our mailbox, which was apparently 3 shades too dark according to some obscure rule no one else followed. "Are you going to fight this?" "I am going to plow my driveway, like I always do." She kissed my cheek. "That is what I thought. I will probably be home late. They are expecting the roads to be bad, so the ER will be busy. Be careful out there." After she left, I got dressed, grabbed my keys, and headed to my truck. I had a 2018 Ford F-250 with a 7-foot plow attachment that I had bought used from a guy in Longmont. It had paid for itself in the first winter, and I enjoyed the satisfaction of clearing my own snow. I fired up the truck, lowered the plow, and started on my driveway. The snow was light and powdery, perfect conditions. I had my driveway cleared in 15 minutes and was working on pushing back the berm at the end when a white pickup with Rocky Mountain Snow Pros emblazoned on the side pulled up and blocked my driveway. A guy in his 30s climbed out, wearing a heavy coat and work gloves. "Hey man, you cannot be doing that." "Doing what?" "Clearing my own driveway. Patricia from the HOA said we are the only ones supposed to be doing snow removal here." He looked uncomfortable, like he did not really want to be having this conversation. "That is between me and the HOA. You are blocking my driveway." "Look, I am just doing my job. She said if anyone tries to do their own snow, we are supposed to report it and she will handle it." "Fine. Report it. Now move your truck." He hesitated, then pulled out his phone and made a call. I could not hear what he was saying, but I saw him nod a few times and then hang up. "She is on her way over." "Great. In the meantime, move your truck so I can finish." "I cannot do that, man. She told me to stay put." I sat there in my truck with the engine running, the plow still down, and waited. Other neighbors were starting to emerge, some with shovels, some just watching. I saw Xavier across the street, leaning against his own truck with his arms crossed and a bemused expression. Patricia arrived 10 minutes later in her silver Lexus SUV, parking behind the snow removal truck. She got out wearing a puffy white coat and designer boots that were completely impractical for snow. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and her makeup looked like she had spent an hour on it despite the early hour. She marched over to my truck, and I rolled down the window. "Mr. Armstrong, I told you this morning that you are required to use our service. And I told you I am not interested. This is my property and I am removing snow from my driveway, not the streets, not the common areas, my driveway. It does not matter. The rule applies to all snow removal within the community. Show me where in the actual HOA bylaws it says you can force homeowners to use a specific contractor." She pulled out a folder from her car. "Right here. Section 12, subsection B. The board has the authority to implement safety and maintenance standards for the community." I took the paper and read it. The language was vague, talking about standards and guidelines, but nothing specific about mandatory contractors. "This does not say what you think it says. The board has interpreted it to include snow removal services. We have the authority to make these decisions." "You cannot just make up rules, Patricia. That is not how this works." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I can and I have. You will be receiving a fine of $500 for violating community standards, and if you continue, I will fine you for each occurrence." "Then I guess I will see you in court." Her smile vanished. "You are making this very difficult, Mr. Armstrong. You are the one trying to force me to pay for a service I do not need. Now tell your contractor to move his truck, or I will call the police for blocking my driveway." The contractor looked at Patricia, who looked like she wanted to argue more but seemed to think better of it. She nodded at him, and he got back in his truck and moved it. I finished clearing my driveway, gave Patricia a polite wave, and parked my truck in the garage. The fine notice arrived the next day, along with another letter threatening legal action if I did not comply. I spent that evening researching Colorado HOA law and calling a lawyer friend of mine, Marcus Chen, who specialized in property law. "They are overstepping," Marcus said after I explained the situation. "An HOA can set reasonable rules about aesthetics and common areas, but they cannot force you to use a specific contractor without a legitimate reason. And even then, they need proper approval from the membership, not just a board vote. So what do I do? First, do not pay the fine. Second, send them a letter formally disputing it and requesting a hearing. Third, if they push it, we file a lawsuit. It will cost them more in legal fees than it is worth, and they know it. Most HOAs back down when you push back. I followed his advice and sent a certified letter to Patricia and the HOA board the next day. I also started talking to my neighbors. It turned out most of them were just as unhappy about the mandatory service. Several, like Xavier, had already paid for private snow removal. Others, especially the elderly residents, could not afford an extra $200 and had always relied on family members or neighbors to help them. A woman named Angela Lopez, who lived 3 houses down, stopped by that evening. She was in her 70s, a retired teacher who had lived in the neighborhood longer than anyone else. "I wanted to thank you for standing up to Patricia," she said. "My grandson usually comes over and clears my driveway with his snowblower. Now she is telling me I have to pay this fee or get fined. I am on a fixed income. I cannot afford that. Have you gotten a fine yet?" "No, but she left a note on my door saying my grandson cannot do it anymore." "That is ridiculous. Keep having him do it. If she fines you, let me know. We are going to fight this." Word spread quickly. By the end of the week, I had a dozen neighbors who were ready to stand with me against the HOA. We organized a meeting at Xavier's house, and 20 people showed up. "Here is the thing," I explained to the group. "Patricia is betting that most of you will just give in rather than fight. That is how HOAs get away with this stuff. But if we stand together, she cannot fine all of us. We need to demand a special meeting with the entire HOA membership, not just the board." A man named Robert Tanner, an accountant who lived on the corner, raised his hand. "I looked at the HOA finances. You know where the money for this snow service is really going. Patricia's son-in-law owns Rocky Mountain Snow Pros." The room erupted. I should have seen it coming, but hearing it confirmed made everything click into place. "That is a conflict of interest," someone shouted. "That has to be illegal," another added. Marcus had already told me that HOA board members were required to disclose conflicts of interest and could not vote on contracts where they had a financial stake. If Patricia had pushed this through without disclosure, she had violated her fiduciary duty to the HOA. "We need proof," I said. "Can you document that connection?" "I can do better," Robert said. "I can show that the contract was approved at a board meeting where only 3 members were present. The bylaws require a quorum of 5 for major expenditures. The vote was invalid." This was getting better and better. I coordinated with Marcus, and we drafted a formal petition calling for a special meeting of all HOA members. By Colorado law, if we got signatures from 20% of the membership, the board had to hold a meeting within 30 days. We got the signatures in less than a week. Patricia was furious. She tried to delay the meeting, claiming scheduling conflicts, but Marcus sent a letter making it clear that failure to hold the meeting would result in legal action. She finally agreed to a date 3 weeks out at the community clubhouse. In the meantime, it snowed again. This time, 8 inches. I got up early and started plowing my driveway. So did 5 other neighbors. When the Rocky Mountain Snow Pros trucks showed up, we had already cleared most of our driveways. Patricia must have told them to make a statement because 3 of their trucks parked directly in front of the driveways we had just cleared, blocking us in. I called the non-emergency police line. "Hi, I need an officer at Meadowbrook Community. Several commercial trucks are blocking private driveways without permission." 2 Boulder Police Department officers arrived 30 minutes later. By then, a crowd had gathered. The officers talked to the truck drivers, who explained they were there on HOA business. Then the officers talked to me and the other homeowners. "These are private driveways. the first officer said to the lead truck driver. If the homeowners are telling you to move, you need to move. But the HOA hired us. The HOA does not own these driveways. The homeowners do. Move the trucks or I will cite you for obstruction. The trucks moved. But now I was really angry. Patricia was escalating this beyond reason. I decided to respond in kind. The next snowfall, I got up at 4 in the morning. I cleared my driveway first, then I went to Angela Lopez's house and cleared hers. Then I did Xavier's and Robert's and every single house of the 20 families who had signed the petition. It took me until noon, but I did it. When the Rocky Mountain Snow Pros trucks showed up at 8 to do their rounds, they found most of their contracted houses already done. I watched from my living room window as the lead driver called someone, probably Patricia, and had an animated conversation. Sure enough, my phone rang 5 minutes later. "You are interfering with HOA business," Patricia said without preamble. "I am helping my neighbors. There is no law against that. You are violating the snow removal policy." "There is no valid snow removal policy." "We will settle that at the meeting." "You are making a lot of trouble for nothing, Mr. Armstrong. I could make your life very difficult here." "Is that a threat, Patricia?" "It is a promise. I have ways of dealing with troublemakers." She hung up. I called Marcus and told him about the conversation. "That sounds like harassment. Document everything. If she does anything retaliatory, we will add it to the lawsuit." The retaliation came 2 days later. I got a notice from the HOA that my truck, which was parked in my own driveway, was in violation of community standards because the plow attachment was unsightly. I was ordered to remove it or face a daily fine of $100. Then Angela Lopez called me in tears. She had received a notice that her house was in violation of exterior maintenance standards, and she was being fined $300 for peeling paint on her back fence. The fence had been like that for 5 years, and no one had ever said anything. Xavier got a notice about his basketball hoop being 6 inches too close to the street. Robert got cited for having a holiday wreath on his door past the January 15th deadline, even though half the neighborhood still had decorations up. Patricia was going after everyone who had signed the petition. I called an emergency meeting at my house that night. 15 people showed up, all holding violation notices. "This is targeted harassment," I said. "She is retaliating against us for challenging her authority. We have documentation of all of this, and it is going to backfire on her badly." "What do we do until the meeting?" Angela asked. "I cannot afford these fines. Do not pay them. Do not acknowledge them. She's going to have to take you to court to collect, and when she does, we will counterclaim for harassment." Marcus had already agreed to represent anyone who got dragged into court over this, and he was doing it pro bono because he was personally offended by Patricia's abuse of power. The night before the HOA meeting, it snowed again. This time, a foot of heavy, wet snow. I woke up at 3 in the morning and got to work. I cleared my driveway, then started on the others. By the time Rocky Mountain Snow Pros showed up at 7, I had done 15 houses. But Patricia had anticipated this. Instead of just parking in front of driveways, her son-in-law's trucks parked directly in the middle of them, on private property, blocking them completely. I called the police again. This time, 4 officers responded because it was multiple properties. The situation was getting tense. Some of the truck drivers looked like they wanted to leave, but their boss was on the phone with Patricia, getting instructions. "You need to move these trucks now," the sergeant said. "You are trespassing on private property." The HOA gave us permission. The HOA does not own these driveways. I am giving you 5 minutes to clear out, or I will start arresting people. That got them moving. But the boss, A guy in his 40s with a scraggly beard who introduced himself as Derek made a point of getting in my face before he left. "You are costing me a lot of money," he said. "Take it up with your mother-in-law. She is the one who made a bad business decision. You think you are smart, but you are just making this worse. Patricia always wins. Always. We will see about that." The trucks finally left, and I finished clearing the driveways. The police sergeant pulled me aside before he left. "Look, I do not know all the details of your HOA dispute, but you should know that we have been getting a lot of calls from this neighborhood lately. Someone is clearly stirring up trouble. Keep documenting everything and stay on the right side of the law. I would hate to see this escalate further." "I appreciate that, officer. I am trying to do this the right way." He nodded and left, but his warning stuck with me. Patricia was unhinged enough to try something stupid, and I needed to be prepared. The HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 that evening at the clubhouse. By 6:30, the parking lot was full, and people were parking on the street. I had never seen this many residents at an HOA meeting. Usually, it was just the board and maybe 3 or 4 other people. Tonight, there had to be 70 people crammed into a room designed for 40. Patricia sat at the front table with the 4 other board members, all looking uncomfortable except for her. She had her usual perfect appearance, but I could see tension in her jaw. I sat in the front row with Marcus, Xavier, Robert, and Angela. We had prepared a presentation documenting everything: the invalid vote, the conflict of interest, the retaliatory fines, the harassment. We had witnesses, documents, and a recording of Patricia's threatening phone call that I had made sure to capture using my voicemail system. Patricia called the meeting to order and tried to start with routine business, but Robert stood up immediately. "Point of order. We are here for a special meeting called by petition. You need to address the snow removal policy first." Patricia's lips thinned. "We will get to that." "No, we will address it now," Marcus said, standing up. "I am Marcus Chen, representing Mr. Armstrong and several other homeowners. According to Colorado HOA statute and your own bylaws, a special meeting called by petition must address the stated purpose before any other business. And who are you to tell me how to run this meeting?" "An attorney who specializes in HOA law. Would you like me to cite the specific statute?" She glared at him but nodded. "Fine, we will discuss the snow removal policy." I stood up and walked to the front with my laptop. "May I use the projector?" One of the other board members, a mild-mannered guy named Stephen Park who looked like he desperately wanted to be anywhere else, nodded and helped me set it up. I pulled up the first slide, showing the section of the bylaws Patricia had cited. "This is the provision Mrs. Henderson used to justify the mandatory snow removal policy. As you can see, it talks about maintenance standards in general terms. It does not grant the board authority to mandate specific contractors." Next slide. "This is the board meeting where the policy was approved, 3 members present. Your bylaws require 5 for a quorum on major expenditures. The vote was invalid." Murmurs went through the crowd. Patricia started to speak, but I kept going. "This is the business registration for Rocky Mountain Snow Pros. The owner is Derek Paulson. And this is Derek Paulson's marriage certificate, showing he is married to Jennifer Henderson Paulson, Patricia Henderson's daughter." The murmurs turned into outright gasps and angry voices. Patricia stood up, her face red. "I disclosed that to the board." "You disclosed it to 2 other board members in a meeting that did not have a quorum, and you voted on a contract that directly benefits your family. That is a textbook conflict of interest and a violation of your fiduciary duty." Marcus took over. "It gets worse." After homeowners began objecting to this policy, Mrs. Henderson engaged in a pattern of retaliatory enforcement. Suddenly, people who had not received violations in years were being cited for minor issues. All of these people just happened to be signers of the petition calling for this meeting. He pulled up copies of the violation notices, showing the dates and the names. Then he played the recording of Patricia's threatening phone call to me. By the time we were done, the room was in an uproar. People were shouting questions at Patricia, demanding explanations. She tried to maintain control, but it was clear she had lost the room. "This is a witch hunt," she finally shouted. "I have done nothing wrong. I have served this community for 10 years. "You have served yourself," Angela Lopez said, standing up. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise. "I have lived here for 25 years. I have watched you turn this HOA into your personal fiefdom. You fine people for nonsense while your friends get away with violations. You spend our money on contracts that benefit your family. You harass anyone who questions you. I am done. We are all done." The applause was deafening. Patricia looked around the room, seeming to realize for the first time that she had no support left. Stephen Park, the other board member, stood up. "I move to immediately suspend the snow removal policy pending a full review by an independent auditor." "Second," another board member said quickly. All in favor, 4 hands went up. Patricia sat with her arms crossed, not voting. "Motion passes," Stephen said. He looked at Patricia. "I also move for your immediate resignation as HOA president effective tonight." "You cannot do that," Patricia said. "Actually, we can," Marcus interjected. "Breach of fiduciary duty is grounds for removal under your bylaws. You can resign, or they can vote to remove you. Your choice." Patricia stood there for a long moment, her face cycling through anger, disbelief, and finally something that might have been fear. "Fine, I resign, but you are all going to regret this." She grabbed her purse and stormed out. A few people clapped, but most just looked relieved that it was over. It was not over. 2 days later, Angela Lopez called me in a panic. Someone had vandalized her car overnight, keying long scratches down both sides and slashing 2 tires. Xavier's mailbox was smashed in. Robert's front window was broken with a rock. I checked my security cameras and found that someone had spray-painted "Troublemaker" on my garage door at 3 in the morning. The person was wearing a ski mask and dark clothing, so I could not identify them, but they were driving a white pickup truck. A white pickup that looked a lot like the Rocky Mountain Snow Pros trucks. I called the police and filed a report. So did Angela, Xavier, and Robert. The Boulder police took it seriously since it was clearly a pattern of targeted vandalism. Detective Sarah Martinez was assigned to the case. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, and took no nonsense from anyone. "Tell me about your HOA situation," she said when she came to take my statement. I explained everything, including the meeting and Patricia's resignation. I showed her the video of the vandalism. "And you think this is retaliation?" "I do not think, I know. 4 houses, all people who led the challenge against Patricia Henderson. All vandalized the same night, 2 days after she was forced out." "You think she did it herself?" "No, but I think she knows who did." "Probably her son-in-law Derek. That is his company's truck in the video." Detective Martinez made notes. "I will look into it. In the meantime, I would suggest extra security measures. If someone is willing to vandalize property, they might escalate." That was a sobering thought. I installed additional cameras and motion sensor lights. Amy was scared, and honestly, so was I. This had gone from an annoying HOA dispute to something potentially dangerous. The next snowfall came 3 days later, 5 inches overnight. I woke up early and looked out at my driveway, debating what to do. If I cleared it myself, was I inviting more trouble? Amy came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "You should do it," she said quietly. What if they come back? Then we deal with it. But you cannot let them intimidate you. That is what they want. She was right. I got dressed, fired up my truck, and started plowing. Then I did Angela's driveway and Xavier's and everyone else who had been targeted. When I got to Robert's house, I found Rocky Mountain Snow Pro's trucks already there. But instead of blocking the driveway, they were clearing it. Derek himself was running the plow. I parked and walked over. "What are you doing?" He shut off his truck and climbed out. He looked terrible, like he had not slept in days. "Look, I need to talk to you." "I am listening." "Patricia is crazy. I knew she was controlling, but I did not realize how far she would go. After the meeting, she came to my house and demanded I help her get revenge on you and the others. I told her no, that it was over and she lost it. Started screaming about how I owed her, how she got me the HOA contract, how I was ungrateful. "Did you vandalize our properties?" "No, I swear I did not, but I know who did." "Who?" "Her nephew, Travis Henderson. He works for me sometimes." She called him and offered him money to do it. He told me about it yesterday, feeling guilty. He is young, stupid, and wanted to help his aunt. I fired him immediately and told him to go to the police. "Has he?" "He is scared. Patricia is threatening him now, saying she will say he acted alone, that she had nothing to do with it." "Did he record any of their conversations?" Derek pulled out his phone. "Better. She texted him instructions. He forwarded them to me. He showed me the texts. They were from Patricia's number, clearly instructing Travis on which houses to target and what to do. She even sent him photos of our houses to make sure he hit the right ones. I need you to send these to Detective Martinez immediately, and Travis needs to come forward." "He will. I will bring him to the station today. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry. I should have stood up to her from the beginning. The whole snow contract thing was wrong and I knew it. I just wanted the business. You are doing the right thing now. That matters." He nodded and got back in his truck. I watched him drive away, then called Detective Martinez and told her what Derek had said. She told me to come to the station and bring Derek and Travis. By that afternoon, all three of us were at the Boulder Police Department. Travis was a kid, maybe 22, looking terrified and guilty. He confessed to everything, showed the detective the texts, and explained how Patricia had manipulated him. "She said they were bad people who were trying to destroy the neighborhood," Travis said. "She is my aunt and I trusted her. I am so sorry." Detective Martinez arrested Travis for vandalism, but given his cooperation and his clear remorse, she indicated the DA would likely offer a plea deal with probation and restitution. Then she went to Patricia's house with a warrant. I was not there for the arrest, but Xavier was driving by and saw the whole thing. He called me immediately. "Dude, you are not going to believe this. Patricia is in handcuffs in her front yard, screaming at the cops. Her husband is just standing there looking mortified. Half the neighborhood is watching." Patricia was charged with conspiracy to commit vandalism, criminal mischief, and witness intimidation for her threats against Travis. Because she had targeted multiple properties, and it was clearly premeditated, the charges were serious. Her lawyer got her out on bond the next day, but the damage was done. Everyone in the neighborhood knew what she had done. Her husband, a quiet guy named Richard, who I had barely ever spoken to, filed for divorce 2 weeks later. The criminal case moved faster than I expected. Patricia's lawyer tried to get the charges reduced, but the texts were damning. Travis testified against her as part of his plea deal, and Derek provided additional evidence of her attempts to manipulate him into retaliating against us. 3 months later, Patricia Henderson pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit criminal mischief and was sentenced to 6 months in jail, 3 years of probation, and restitution to all the victims. She was also permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in Colorado. Travis got probation and community service. He personally apologized to each of us and paid for all the repairs himself, working extra hours to come up with the money. Derek closed Rocky Mountain Snow Pros and moved to Wyoming, wanting a fresh start away from the whole mess. The HOA held new elections. Stephen Park became president, and the first thing he did was conduct a full audit of the HOA finances. It turned out Patricia had been skimming money for years, funneling it into personal accounts through inflated contractor fees and fake expense reports. The total was nearly $40,000. The HOA filed a civil suit against her, and her assets were frozen. She ended up losing her house and having to pay back every penny, plus interest and legal fees. As for the snow removal policy, the new board scrapped it completely. Homeowners were free to clear their own snow, hire whoever they wanted, or use a vetted list of contractors the HOA recommended but did not require. The mandatory fee was eliminated, and everyone who had paid it got a refund. Life in Meadowbrook community slowly returned to normal. Angela Lopez became one of my closest friends, always inviting Amy and me over for dinner and telling stories about the neighborhood's history. Xavier and I started a tradition of clearing snow together on big storm days, helping out the elderly residents and anyone who needed it. Robert Tanner joined the HOA board as treasurer and implemented transparent financial reporting, with monthly updates posted online for all residents to review. Trust was slowly rebuilt. I kept my plow attachment on my truck, and every time it snowed, I felt a sense of satisfaction pushing that white powder off my driveway. It was never really about the snow. It was about standing up to someone who thought they could bully people into submission. Amy and I got engaged that spring. We had the party at the community clubhouse, and it felt like the whole neighborhood showed up. Even Richard Henderson came, looking happier than I had ever seen him. "I wanted to apologize for Patricia," he said quietly. "I knew she could be difficult, but I had no idea how far she had gone. Thank you for standing up to her. I think it saved me as much as anyone." "You have nothing to apologize for," I told him. "You were not responsible for her choices." He shook my hand and moved on, and I looked around at my neighbors, my friends, my community. This was what an HOA was supposed to be. People working together, helping each other, making the neighborhood better for everyone. Not a petty dictator extorting money and crushing anyone who disagreed. The following winter brought record snowfall to Boulder. We had storms every week, sometimes twice a week. My truck got a serious workout. I cleared my driveway, then Angela's, then Xavier's, then anyone else who needed help. Other neighbors did the same. We had a whole network of people with plows, snow blowers, and shovels, all helping each other out. One particularly bad storm dumped 18 inches overnight. I was out at 5 in the morning, plowing by headlight. As I finished my driveway and started on the street in front of my house, I saw Angela standing on her porch with a thermos. "I made hot chocolate," she called out. "Come warm up when you are done." "Give me 20 minutes," I shouted back. I finished the driveways on our cul-de-sac and parked my truck. Angela handed me a steaming mug, and we sat on her porch watching the sun come up over the mountains, the snow sparkling in the early light. "You know, I almost moved away last year," Angela said. "When Patricia was at her worst, I thought about selling the house and going to live with my daughter in Arizona. I am glad you did not. Me too. You reminded me that we do not have to accept bullies. We can fight back. And when we do it together, we win." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking hot chocolate and watching the neighborhood wake up. Xavier came out and started his snowblower. Robert emerged with a shovel, helping his elderly neighbor clear her walkway. Families appeared, kids excited about the snow, already planning sledding trips. This was community. Real community. Not rules and fines and mandatory contractors. Just people helping people because that is what neighbors do. My phone buzzed with a text from Amy. Surgery ran late, staying for double shift. Love you, do not overdo it with the plowing. I smiled and texted back. Already done. Love you too, be safe. Angela stood up with a groan, her knees protesting the cold. I better get inside and start breakfast. You want some? I am making pancakes. I would love that. We went inside, and she put me to work mixing batter while she heated the griddle. Her house was warm and smelled like cinnamon and coffee. Photos covered every surface, documenting decades of life in this neighborhood. I have a picture of your house being built, she said, noticing me looking. Wanna see? She pulled out an old album and showed me photos from 30 years ago. The street was dirt, the trees were saplings, and everything looked raw and new, but you could see the promise of what it would become. We thought we were building something special, Angela said, and we were. People cared about each other, we had block parties and barbecues, kids played in the street. Then gradually, people moved away, new people came in, and Patricia gained control. She changed everything. Things are better now. They are, thanks to you. Thanks to all of us, I just started it. She flipped a pancake and gave me a look. Do not be modest, you stood up when no one else would, that takes courage. We ate pancakes and talked about everything and nothing. She told me about her late husband, who had been a professor at CU Boulder. I told her about growing up in Michigan, and how I had ended up in Colorado for a job that I ended up loving more than I expected. By the time I left, the sun was fully up, and the plows were out on the main roads. Life was moving again. The spring HOA meeting was well attended, as all the meetings were now. Stephen presented the budget, Robert gave the financial report, and several committees gave updates on various projects. There was discussion, some disagreement, but it was all civil and productive. At the end, Stephen asked if there was any new business. I stood up. I have a suggestion. I think we should create a community assistance fund. When we have elderly residents or people with disabilities who need help with snow removal or other maintenance, we could use HOA funds to hire contractors to help them. Make it optional and based on need, not mandatory for everyone. There was immediate support for the idea. We voted on it that night, and it passed unanimously. The fund was set up with a budget of $5,000 per year, and volunteers were recruited to assess need and coordinate services. It was exactly what Patricia's mandatory snow removal scheme should have been, if she had actually cared about helping people instead of enriching her family. Summer came, and Amy and I got married in a small ceremony at a mountain venue outside Boulder. Our reception was back in the neighborhood, in Xavier's backyard. Someone set up a volleyball net, kids ran around with sparklers, and Angela made her famous potato salad. Patricia Henderson was in prison, serving her 6-month sentence. I did not think about her much anymore. She was a problem we had solved, a lesson we had learned. Richard Henderson came to the wedding, bringing a nice gift and his new girlfriend, a cheerful woman named Susan who taught yoga. He looked 10 years younger and genuinely happy. I heard Patricia is getting out next month, Xavier said as we stood by the grill, drinking beer and watching the sun set. Good for her. As long as she stays away from HOA boards, I do not care what she does. Think she learned her lesson? I doubt it. People like that rarely do. But it is not our problem anymore. Xavier clinked his beer against mine. Amen to that. The party went late, with dancing and laughter and the kind of joy that only comes from good friends and good times. Amy and I left around midnight, walking hand in hand back to our house under a sky full of stars. Happy, she asked. Very. Good, because I am pregnant. I stopped walking. What? She grinned. I found out yesterday. I wanted to wait until today to tell you. Wedding present. I picked her up and spun her around, both of us laughing. That is the best present ever. We made it home and stayed up talking about the future, about names and nurseries and all the things that came with becoming parents. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet and peaceful. This was home. This was community. This was worth fighting for. The next winter, when the first snow fell, I was out there with my plow as always. But this time, I had a new helper. Amy, 6 months pregnant and glowing, sat in the passenger seat directing me to which driveways needed clearing. Angela's next, she said. Then that new family on the corner. What was their name? The Mitchells. They just moved in last month. Right. We should invite them to dinner sometime. Good idea. We worked through the morning, clearing driveways and spreading goodwill. The Mitchells came out to thank us, a young couple with 2 small kids. They were from Texas and had never dealt with serious snow before. We are happy to help, I told them. That is what we do here. You need anything, just ask. The wife, whose name was Jennifer, looked relieved. Everyone has been so welcoming. Our last neighborhood was not like this. We worked hard to make it this way, Amy said, and we intend to keep it that way. As we drove away, Amy put her hand on her belly and smiled. I am glad our kid is going to grow up here. Me too. The snow kept falling, the neighborhood kept thriving, and life kept moving forward. There were still HOA meetings and occasional disputes, but nothing like the Patricia era. We had learned our lesson about letting one person accumulate too much power. And I never got a single fine for plowing my own driveway again. Years passed. Our daughter Sophia grew up playing in the same streets I had fought to protect. Angela became her honorary grandmother, teaching her to bake and telling her stories about the neighborhood's history, including the story of how her dad had stood up to the mean HOA lady. You were very brave, Sophia told me one night at bedtime when she was 7. I was just doing what was right, I said. That is what brave means, Daddy. Out of the mouths of babes, Xavier's kids and our daughter became best friends. Robert retired and spent his time maintaining the community garden he had helped establish. Stephen served as HOA president for 6 years before passing the torch to a younger resident who brought fresh ideas and energy. Patricia Henderson moved away after her release from prison. I heard through the grapevine that she ended up in a different state, living quietly and keeping a low profile. Her marriage had ended, her reputation was destroyed, and she had learned the hard way that actions have consequences. Sometimes I wondered if she ever thought about what had happened, if she ever understood why things had gone so wrong. Probably not. People like that rarely saw their own faults. But it did not matter anymore. She was gone, and we had built something better in her absence. On the 10-year anniversary of the snow removal fight, the HOA threw a community celebration. Someone had the bright idea to make it a winter festival, with sledding and hot chocolate and a snow sculpture contest. I built a massive snow plow truck with Sophia's help. We did not win the contest, but we had fun trying. That evening, as the party wound down and people headed home, Stephen pulled me aside. I want to thank you again for what you did, he said. I know it gets said a lot, but you really did change this place. You showed us that we did not have to accept tyranny, even small-scale HOA tyranny. That matters. We all did it together, I said, echoing the words I had said so many times over the years. True, but someone had to be first. That was you. I looked around at the neighborhood, at the people I had come to love, at the community we had built together. Lights twinkled in windows, kids played in the snow, and someone was singing Christmas carols off-key but with great enthusiasm. It was worth it, I said simply, and it was. Every fine, every confrontation, every moment of stress and uncertainty, all worth it for this. Amy came over and slipped her arm through mine. Sophia was on my shoulders, tired and happy. We walked home together as a family, through streets I had fought to protect, and a neighborhood I was proud to call home. The snow fell gently around us, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the scrape of someone plowing their driveway, as it should be, free, independent, and unafraid. That was what home was supposed to feel like. And finally, after all the struggle and conflict, it did. The trucks were gone, the fines were history, and the only thing that mattered was the community we had built together. A real community, based on mutual respect and cooperation, not fear and control. I had refused to use their snow removal service, and in doing so, I had helped plow a path to something better, and that made every moment of the fight worthwhile.